Welcome to this Blue Light training video series. In this session, we'll get started using the Blue Fusion plugin with Analyst Notebook. The Blue Fusion plugin will allow you to connect to various databases, such as RMS feeds and SQL databases. These data sources can also be exported and imported into the Blue Fusion repository and can contain any type of records, such as arrest records, DMV, or financial. To access the Blue Fusion portal in Analyst Notebook, open the Home ribbon and select Connect, Blue Fusion for Analyst Notebook, then click Connect. From there, log in with your credentials. In the Data Sources pane that populates on the right, click the blue hyperlink that says Open Blue Fusion Portal. We now see the Blue Fusion portal home screen. You can see tabs on the left and quick access buttons on the bottom. The import function will allow us to import data from a database. Select Import, New Import, then click Browse to select a file import. For this example, let's select this MS13 database exported CSV file. Then click Open. From here, we can create a new specification or use an existing specification. Since the specification for our example does not already exist, we'll make sure Create New Specification is selected. If the new specification already existed, we could select Use Existing Specification and select the specification in the list. Click OK. Here, the import process is broken down into 3 specific steps with various choices within each step. We'll start with Define Columns. Let's select the characters that separate your columns. Since we're importing a CSV file, we'll select comma. Next, we can identify separator characters that are preceded by and/or contained by specific characters. We can also extract column headers from a specific row. In this case, we would specify row 1, and we see our column headers would be removed. Or we could ignore rows starting with a specific character. However, we would have to return to the original file to insert that character into that row if it did not already exist. Since we are keeping the settings at default, let's click Next. In the Assign Column section, we can add new entities and new links to set up our import specification. This would be the same specification referenced when we selected whether we wanted to create a new one or select an existing one. Let's start by adding a new entity. Click Add New Entity, and you can see the various entity types available by default in Blue Fusion. In our example, since these are people connected to each other, let's first select a person entity. You can see a person entity appears on our chart, and the Entity tab populates on the right with options to customize a variety of values for the selected entity. We can customize those values now, or we can continue filling our chart first, then customize the values for each. Let's add a second person entity. Next, we'll select Add a New Link. Then click the first entity and drag to the second entity and release to create a link between the two. Select the first entity, and we'll customize the values. The representation is an icon, the type is a person entity, the identity value is not set, and the label value is set at default, which is same as identity. Let's set the identity values for each of our entities. With our first entity selected on the chart, select the Identity Value field, then click Insert Column, and select the identity column we want to use for this entity. In this case, let's select Entity A from the list. We can select the other entity in our chart and follow the same steps, this time selecting Entity B from the list. Next, let's click on the link in our chart. We can see that the value for type is not set. Let's click to set the type. Our only option is Relationship Link, so let's select it. The options which appear here are based on our schema and what options we have for creating various entities and links, as well as what the software will and will not allow us to link together. Just as before, let's select the Identity Value field, click Insert Column, and select the column we want to use for this link's identity. In this case, let's select the Type column identifying the link as associates. If we need to add additional attributes to these entities and links, we could do that at this point. At this point, if we select Next, purely for example, and if there are errors within our entities, we would see those errors listed here. We'd also have the option of saving the specification as well as naming the file. The errors show that neither of our entities have attributes, so let's go back and correct those errors. Click Back. An attribute is something about an entity or link that will not change. If you're referring to people, things like date of birth, blood type, or gender are all examples of attributes. Let's add an attribute to Entity A, select Entity A, open the Attributes tab, click Add, and then select Click to Set in the Class field. This reveals the variety of options for entity attributes. For this example, let's select Full Name and Other Names. Next, let's drag the Entity A column into the Value field. Let's repeat these steps for Entity B. Select Entity B in the chart, click Add, select the Class field, select Other Names, and drag Entity B into the Value field. For an organization, it's incredibly important to maintain the appropriate format and structure of entering your data. This helps avoid any data discrepancies from one analyst to another, and it also assists in the analytical tasks that are later found in Analyst's notebook. Now that we've assigned attributes, let's click Next. We can see here that there are no errors this time, and we have a valid import. Let's save our specification as Blue Fusion Demo. If we click Next at this point, nothing will happen. So let's click Import. We have our Import Progress window here. If we're working with a large amount of data, this process may take a moment. However, the importing process is relatively quick. Once the process is complete, we can click Close. This concludes the importing process of the data. At this point, the data exists here within the repository, and we can continue to refine our search results based on the information. That's it for this session on getting started using the Blue Fusion plugin with Analyst Notebook. Thank you for watching, and thank you for choosing Blue Light.